Hi, welcome back to my channel, and in this video I am going to be talking about the parts of the guitar, but real quickly I want to mention this is my Ibanez RGMS8 8-string guitar. I've done some minor modifications to it. I changed the volume knob and the tone knob to these yellow knobs and a yellow selector switch, kind of like I did on that Mitchell guitar in that other video. And I also found a yellow strap that says police line do not cross, which I thought would go really cool with the yellow, and it's got these rubber washer things that help hold the strap on. I'm going to do some more simple modifications over the next few months, but I thought I would talk about that. But in this video I'm just going to go over the basic parts of a guitar, and I might start doing some videos on how to play guitar. We'll start at the headstock. Some headstocks have all of the tuners and tuning pegs all on one side. Some have some of them on this side, some have some on this side. For this one, it has 4 on this side and 4 on that side, with it being an 8-string guitar. With this being a fan fret, the nut is going kind of at an angle because of the multi-scale thing where each string is its own scale length, but normally they go straight across, and the frets normally go straight across. There are 24 frets. The frets are these metal wires, and actually the space between the metal wires are actually also called the frets. So actually a fretless guitar or a fretless bass truly isn't fretless, it just means it doesn't have the fret wires. So we have the neck, and then the brown fingerboard is one piece of wood, and the neck, this is the back of the neck, so the fretboard is attached to the neck. And then we got the body, we got the upper horn and the lower horn, we got a neck pickup, a bridge pickup, and then the bridge. And like I said, we got the pickup selector switch. This one's a 5-way switch. Some are 3-way switches, and there's even some 4-way switches that exist. Some guitars have multiple knobs. This one just has a volume and a tone. Regular Fender Strat has 3 knobs. A Les Paul has 4 knobs. Some have even more than that. Some have more switches than this. This is a Strat style body. There's also Les Paul style bodies, Telecaster style bodies. Let's see. And on this particular guitar, you access the truss rod through a little space right here between the pickup and the neck. And then I'll show you the back, because there are a few things on the back. This one's string through body, which means you put the strings through here and then they go through the bridge across the neck and up to the tuning posts. We have the bolts that hold this on, because this is a bolt-on construction, which means these screws are tight and they're pulling the neck into the body joint. And then we have the plate here for the control panel. When you open that up, you can get into the tone pot, the volume pot, and the pickup selector switch, and the output jack. And the output jack is right here. Now, some brands will put the output jack here, some will put it over here at an angle. There's all different setups for that. For a first guitar, a little bit of advice on getting your first guitar: try to get one with 2 pickups, and I would say get a short scale one probably to start out on, because it makes it easier when you're starting. I have 3 short scale guitars that I like using for different things. So you want to have at least 2 pickups. You do not need a vibrato bar when you're starting out. I rarely have ever needed a vibrato bar. That's why none of the guitars I currently have a vibrato bar, is because I haven't really, the songs I like don't have vibrato bar on them, or they rarely do, and there's other ways to get that sound without a vibrato bar, which I can talk about in a future video. You'll also probably want a bolt-on neck for your first guitar. And you probably don't want one with a lot of controls. And I would probably stay away from an active instrument for your first instrument, because you don't want to have to worry about changing batteries on top of learning the instrument. Now, this is an 8-string guitar. It would probably be a good idea to start on a 6-string guitar, whether it's an electric or an acoustic. You don't actually have to start on an acoustic. You can start on an electric. I started on acoustic. Pick an instrument that looks interesting to you, and you'll enjoy it more and you'll stick with it. Just get a little basic amp, like those little amps I sometimes use for demoing effects pedals. One of those little $50 practice amps is a good place to start, and then eventually get a bigger amp once you know you're going to stick with it. You don't need a fancy instrument. It doesn't even have to be a name brand instrument. Just get one that's gonna be good enough for you to start out on. If you know someone who already knows how to play guitar, have them go with you to the store to pick out your first instrument. Because that'll help you a lot. Because they'll be able to help make sure you get what you need. Because sometimes salesmen will steer you towards a certain instrument, but it may not be what a beginner needs. You can also get starter packs where it's got a guitar. For an electric, it'll have an electric guitar, it'll have an amp, a gig bag usually, picks, a tuner, and sometimes a thing with information for going online for a few free lessons. And those come in different styles. Like there's an Epiphone one, there's a Squire one, which is the more budget-friendly version of Fender. Ibanez, I think, still makes those, and I think a couple other companies make them too. And then some of the generic brands also have starter packs. So those are options for starting out if you're new to guitar. If you're more familiar with the guitar, picking your next instrument will be a little easier because you already have some experience of how to choose an instrument that's right for you. Over time, I just gradually tried different things. I like weird instruments. That's why I like things like 8-string guitars and 6-string basses and 6-string ukuleles and stuff like that. I gravitate towards like the instruments most people are not interested in, rather than the instruments that everybody else is really big on, because I want to create my own distinctive style and sound. So I go for instruments that to me are less likely to be as popular, so that way I can do something a little more distinctive. But find what you like. Like, I really enjoy this. When I played this in the store, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool, so I play this one quite a bit. I play my Paul Gilbert one quite a bit. Most recently I got back into playing my Squire Strat. I've been playing my Billy Sheehan bass quite a bit lately, which I hadn't played for a while. But I also have a short scale, precision style bass that's by, I don't even know if that company still exists, but it's by a generic brand company. But it's a really good bass, even though it's a short scale bass. It sounds really cool. I've used it on stage. I'm trying to think. And then I got 2 6-string basses that I enjoy playing. I have the Glary, and I have an SX jazz style bass, which will be in a video later this week. But yeah, just find what interests you, and if you're totally new to playing guitar, talk to people you know that know how to play guitar. Ask them to go with you to the store and help you find what is going to be a good choice for you. Because for one, if they know you really well, they'll know some of your personality and stuff, so they'll be able to steer you towards an instrument that might be better suited to the type of music they know you listen to. Because there are some instruments that are better suited for certain styles of music than others, sometimes. But that's not always the case. Like, you can play a Telecaster in heavy metal, even though you more often see it in country music. So that's not necessarily true. I mean, there are instances when there are instruments that are better suited for certain styles of music, but it doesn't mean you can't use them in other styles of music. But start out with something really simple and basic. That way you can get used to fretting notes, strumming chords, playing scales, learning the basic arpeggios, and learning your first songs. Then once you progress more to learning guitar solos and some music theory, which is good to learn, music theory, then you'll be ready for a guitar that'll be better suited for what you're doing when you reach that point. And then that'll be the case as you go along in music to each new understanding of music and your ability to play. But music can be a fun thing, and just find what is going to help you to stick with it. I've been playing guitar and bass guitar since I started my very first guitar lesson in 1987. I messed around a little bit with bass guitars in a music store in 1989, but I started taking lessons on bass guitar in 1990. So that's well over 30 years that I've been playing in guitar and bass. And then in the 90s, I started learning keyboard. So even with keyboard, I started out with using my sister's synthesizer and eventually got my own keyboard at one point, and then eventually sold that and just didn't have a keyboard for a long time, and recently I finally got a keyboard again. So because I haven't played in so long, I went and got a basic keyboard so I could get back up to where I was going, and then figured out what kind of keyboard I want going forward. And also, if you get a bundle, sometimes it'll come with a stand. This stand that I'm using here is a really simple stand. It works for both acoustic, electric, and bass guitar. It's like $15 on Amazon, but some bundles will come with some kind of a guitar stand. A guitar stand is a good thing to have, because then you can have it right next to where you like to sit and play. Because find an area in your room or house or wherever where you like to sit and play, and that'll keep you playing. Also, another good thing for starting out is get a metronome, and hopefully find a really good teacher, and the teacher will help you not just with the basics of playing guitar, but they'll be able to show you how to use the metronome, different ways to use the metronome to get the most out of playing guitar. Because a metronome is a really good tool, but it shouldn't be your goal of perfection. Your goal should be to make something that's going to be having emotion and impact on your audience rather than just being robotically perfect. Also, listen to bands that you really enjoy, or singers, or not singers, guitar players that you really enjoy listening to and whose songs you really want to learn. Obviously, when you're starting out, you're not going to be playing the individual notes of a riff or a guitar solo. You're probably just going to be strumming the basic chords at first. Hold on a second. Oh, it's okay. So just keep it simple at first. Do what research you can before you go to the guitar store. Get the help of people who already play guitar that you know, or do your research on what you need to know before buying a guitar. I shouldn't be the only source or information for this. You should look at other sources too. I'm not a 100% expert. I'm not a master of the guitar. No one is. It's a lifelong learning thing. Once you start this, understand for as long as you play guitar, you're always going to be learning something new every day. I learn something new every time I pick up the guitar or the bass or play the keyboard. I'm always learning something new. Even if I'm just playing a scale, I might stumble on something I didn't know before or notice before when playing. I could be practicing arpeggios or working on a piece of music. And as I'm doing that, I will still be learning things. I've been on stage and learned things about music being on stage. I've also learned things in the weirdest situations, like when I had a guitar teacher in the 90s who was teaching me about modes, and I was really confused about it, but then I was with some friends and we were watching the Pink Floyd movie The Wall, and while we were watching it, suddenly they made sense. I don't know why it happened that way, but suddenly modes made sense. So you don't necessarily learn things when you expect to learn them, and it's not always going to feel like you're learning things too. That's another thing. I remember when I was going through lessons, there were sometimes I'd go into a lesson, I'd be frustrated, and I'd explain to my guitar teacher that I felt like I was reaching a point where I didn't feel like I was learning anything, and then he was like, that meant that I needed to stop focusing on learning and just focus on enjoying, and then eventually you start feeling like you're learning again. At least that's what it was for me. It could be something different for each person. So I just thought I would make a video about the parts of the guitar, and I wouldn't call it advice, but at least just a way of explaining what I've learned from the guitars I've bought and from my experience when I got my first guitar and when I got my first bass. My very first bass had 2 pickups. It had a bunch of controls, but they were all labeled. My first guitar, electric guitar actually, was a Washburn guitar, and it had 3 pickups. It had a 5-way switch. It had a volume control and a tone control, and it had a vibrato bar. Looking back, I shouldn't have had a vibrato bar on a guitar that I was learning on. Before that, I had a Hondo acoustic guitar that I learned my first notes on. And it was a very simple Hondo guitar. It was kind of big for how small I was at the time, but it was, I think it was I want to say it was either a concert size or a dreadnought size, because it's hard to remember, because it was like almost 40 years ago when I first got it. But I played on that until I got my first electric. And starting out, you may not necessarily what was I thinking? Sorry, lost my thought. Starting out, you're going to feel like you're getting a lot more information right away than you expect sometimes. Depending on who your teacher is and what they're using to teach you. My first lessons for guitar were from the Hal Leonard guitar method. My first bass guitar lessons were just because I already knew some scales and I already knew some of the notes on the fretboard, but not all the notes on the fretboard. My first lessons were to learn every note on the fretboard, and I started learning, like we went over some of the basic type songs you learn from the Hal Leonard method, but for bass. We didn't use the Hal Leonard bass method, but some of what he came up with was similar to what you would learn in that. And he would also help me learn songs off my favorite albums, although he would come up with versions of them that fit the level of musician I was at the time. He wasn't having me, do shreddy stuff because I wasn't ready for that. So he would come up with he'd have me like do a version of the rhythm guitar part that was arranged for what I could do, and then gradually he would have me work on doing melodies or arpeggios or something, and then gradually build up to being able to do the regular bass line. And then in guitar class, the guitar class I took, which was in high school, we basically did like folk songs and traditional songs, but we were using the Hal Leonard method for learning the scales and learning chords, and we didn't really go into arpeggios much. But thankfully my bass teacher was teaching me arpeggios, so that ended up covering that. And then gradually I got into 5-string bass and 6-string bass and 7-string guitar, and then in the last few years, 8-string guitar. Which each time you add a string, there's a level of adjustment and learning involved to getting used to the new notes that you have access to and how to use them and how to figure out how to make it sound good with the type of music you play. And then, of course, effects pedals. That's another learning curve, too. Starting out, you're not going to need effects pedals. If you're a guitar player and you get one of those basic little practice amps, it's usually got overdrive or distortion built into it. But starting off, you're not going to want to use that. You're just going to want to use a clean sound and work on whatever the teacher's having you work on. Even though I've been playing guitar since, the 1980s, I'm going back to having a teacher again because I think there's value in having a teacher who can give you feedback on what you're working on. So there's it's not a bad thing to have a teacher, no matter how old you are, or no matter what your skill level is. Having a teacher can be a great thing. One of America's great composers, George Gershwin, had a music teacher his whole life. And he composed some really amazing music, but he never stopped having a teacher. So that's a good thing, because you have someone who's going to be able to give you feedback on how you're progressing, and sometimes they can even make suggestions of how you can work on becoming better, which you're not going to be able to do for yourself. So I am somewhat self-taught, but I've also had lessons. But when I did the self-taught stuff, I didn't have somebody to be able to correct me when I was doing using a technique that would hurt my wrist or something. The great thing about having a teacher is they can see what you're doing with your hands and your wrists and your arm position and everything, so that way you don't hurt yourself, or even it'll help you improve your speed or your timing or your tone. So I thank you for watching this video, and please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my videos, please share them. And the next video will be me doing a piece of music with the SX 6-string bass. I don't know what piece of music I'm going to do. I'm probably going to go through some of my old songs that I wrote when I was a teenager and maybe update it a little bit and do one of those instrumentals. So I will see you in the next video. Have a great week.